through February. Go team. Maybe we won't make it through March. Coronavirus is sweeping the planet. Okay, let's get started. I read 13 books in the month of February, somehow one more than January, which is surprising because January is shorter than February, although technically, at the time of filming, oh, the DNC wants me to help. Technically, one of these is not done yet, but when it is done, and it will get done, I promise you, that'll be 13. So here we go. We started off the month with Murray by Ashley Shelby. This is a climate fiction retelling of Benito Cereno by Herman Melville. It is exclusively available through a printing press that's in Brooklyn. However, despite that and like how it's kind of harder to get, it is so good. 5 out of 5 stars. It's super short and it is like so engaging. Climate change impact is here. In this reimagining of Herman Melville's Benito Cereno, the world's polar bear population has dwindled and the remaining pods have been relocated to the coast of Antarctica in an attempt to save them using a process called assisted colonization. The last pod of Baffin Bay bears has boarded the Procession icebreaker, captained by a man who is keenly aware that previous crews in this run have gone mad. Are the events that unfold on the sea journey the ravings of an addled mind, the symptoms of contagious hysteria? Or have the bears been watching and learning our ways for millennia and have only chosen to rise up because the world is on the verge of collapse, if only to take control of their own demise? I'm going to leave the link to this down below. Please read this. Fantastic. Next, I read Fun Home, a family tragicomic by Alison Bechtel. This I read in one sitting, sat down, and I was like, oh, I'll just read a little bit before I go over to my friend's house. And I got about halfway through, and I texted my friend, and I was like, I'm gonna be late. And I stayed I read the whole thing in one go. And it was so beautiful and tragic and really doesn't shy away from any of the harsh realities of like life being complicated and people being complicated and queerness being complicated. Especially if you identify as LGBTQ+, I cannot recommend this enough. Also, if you're a heterosexual and you just like reading good things, recommend it as well. Next, I read The Coquette by Hannah Webster Foster. That's her name, right? Yeah, good for me. Picking that up. I read this for my colonial literature class. I actually really liked it. This is my exact era of literature that I just love. Like, I sink into it, and I love a sweet, sweet 19th century read. This is technically not 19th century. It's because it's in 1797. However, that 3 years, does it really count? I don't think so. It is about a coquette who, by coquette, is like a little flirt, a little 19th century flirt, and the person that she's engaged to marry, or that her parents engaged her to marry, just died. So, she is having a little bit of fun before she has to inevitably get engaged again and become married, because when you're a woman in this time, that's what you gotta do, man. Like, there's no other option. However, she has 2 options for her attention. It's a classic love triangle a la 19th century. And look how cute she is. Who wouldn't? There's a reverend and then a rake, which is a slutty little guy. So this book is like funny for the first half, and then the second half gets misogynistic, and then I'm like, Hannah, my dude, like, pull it together. There's no need to rep our ladies like this. But then I'm like, oh, is it satire or is it not satire? And I don't know if I would have read this if I hadn't had it in Colonial Lit, but I think you might want to read it. It's pretty good. I'm going to give it, for its purpose, for me, a 5 out of 5 stars. For the general public, I'll give it a 3 out of 5. Next, I read Translations of Beauty by Mia Yoon. This I read for my comparative literature class, and it was so good. I also read this in one sitting, which took me a long time. A whole Saturday was invested in this, and I don't regret it one bit. This tells the story of these 2 identical twins and their journey from South Korea to America after one of the twins suffers a permanent physical disfiguration to their face. And it like it's a postmodern novel, and it jumps about like three, like, the temporality in it's very strange. There's like 3 timelines that you jump about through, and it is a really good book. I'm gonna say 4 out of 5. I read The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I will link my video review of this down below so I don't have to chat about it now because this video is going to be super long. Okay, love you, Maggie, bye. Next, I read American Gods by Neil Gaiman. This has been in the work for a long time because it's super long. It's for my sci-fi and fantasy class. I love the concept. It's like Percy Jackson adult version. And I like that, and I love mythology, very fascinating. I wasn't super connected to the main character, but I like definitely was very engaged the whole time because I just loved like finding out who each like mythological person was and like seeing how things were going to wrap up. Neil Gaiman's excellent. I read him for the first time at the very end of last year when I read Good Omens. So this is a pretty good sign that I'm going to like his writing for many years to come. As far as I know, he's got quite a prolific collection. Oh, yep, there's a whole list of his stuff. Okay. Next, I read The Sufferings of the Young Werther. I know that I pronounced that weird. That's how my professor pronounces it, and he speaks fluent German. I'm assuming that's correct. I'm not going to try and say the name of that, because he has said that, but also I don't speak German, and I didn't listen hard enough on that one. So that's the name of the guy. My friend Rachel, who you've seen on this channel before, she's a delight, thinks that this guy is the original incel. And I have to say, after reading this, I agree. This is your classic little epistolary novel, and I appreciate it for what it is and what it does. I'm deeply irritated by the main character. However, I think at least 20% of that is not his fault because he does definitely have severe mental illness. However, he's still annoying and like very privileged and irritating, and I don't recommend it unless you're like looking to expand your like knowledge, because this is like a pretty big, this is calling it a masterpiece of European imagination. So like if you're looking to expand your horizons and grow your classical knowledge, might be a good option. I don't know if I'd recommend you to read it for fun. Next, I read The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This I read in one sitting. I started it at midnight and I finished it at 3 a.m. and I went to class at 8 a.m. and I didn't have any regrets. It was so good. It's, oh god, I mean, everyone and their mothers read this by now, but I'm still gonna tell you how great it was. It has the hate to love trope, which, my favorite. Also, I don't know if I've mentioned this on this channel, I just today turned in my proposal to do research this summer through my school's library about the history of the enemies to lovers trope in 19th century literature. I want to trace it from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, like through the 19th century, look at Penny Dreadfuls and dime novels. So this was like the perfect time for me to be reading this hate to love trope. Besides, I needed like some a de-stressor. I needed something to calm my little head down, and this did it. One of my top books for last year was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This did not top that. However, it was really nice. It was a cute little read. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. And if you're feeling stressed, I recommend reading it. It's very relaxing. Next, I read Call Down the Hawk by Maggie Stiefvater. I will not say too much about this because I literally just before this video is started filmed the review for that. However, you won't be seeing that for a while because I plan to release all of these video reviews for The Raven Cycle and then Call Down the Hawk in order. I still have to get through the rest of the series, as you saw in this video earlier. I only have this sucker done so far, so I gotta get through 3 more books and the semester's wild, so we don't know when that'll happen. However, I did read Call Down the Hawk this month, and I loved it. Next, I read Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut. I'm just not... I know this is, like, not accurate, but the vibe of this book reminds me very much of As I Lay Dying by Faulkner, and it just didn't do it for me. I was engaged. It was good. but I don't know if I would read it again. I'm glad I was forced to read it for class because I know it's like, he's like, that Vonnegut's the guy, but 3 out of 5. Next, I read Eeyore Leroy by Frances Harper. This was really good. I can't believe that I've never heard of Frances Harper before. She's like an incredibly successful and prolific black feminist from the 18th century, I believe. No, it's the 19th century. Damn, everything was happening in the 19th century. Woo. I don't know how I would describe this book to you, except as one part feminism, one part like defeating or trying to defeat slavery and racist ideals, and then one part religious like overtones. And if you can force your way past the religious overtones, it's amazing. I have nothing against the religious overtones. I just felt like I didn't understand some of it because it was so religious in nature. Frances Harper was incredibly pious, and so there's like a lot of biblical like references in here that I think if I had a extensive knowledge of the Bible, I perhaps would have gotten a more full experience, but that experience would have been 110% rather than 100%. So, still good. Next, I read Stormfront by Jim Butcher. This is about a wizard detective in Chicago. This was, it was a fun little romp. I give it a 3 out of 5. It wasn't like amazing literature. It wasn't anything spectacular, nothing to write home about, but it was like a cute little sci-fi fantasy read. It's pretty short. Little misogynistic, but it's hard to find a male author who isn't. Finally, my 13th book for the month is Little Women. I'm not done with it yet. I have that much left, but I will finish it either tonight or tomorrow. Little Women was my favorite book when I was a kid, and I feel like that's true of a lot of people. So reading it this time was a little rougher for me than it was when I was a kid. It took me a while to get through. Some of you will know that I had a goal of finishing this prior to the movie coming out, and I didn't do it. So, but I'm still gonna give it a 5 out of 5 because it is just so, the characters are so captivating, and I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5 as well as tell you to go watch Greta Gerwig's adaptation right now. Okay, so that was a super long video. I hope you liked it. I hope your Februarys went well. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next week.